2011-2012 Premier League season had the craziest end to a campaign I have ever seen. I mean, we all know what happened, but on the last day both Manchester teams were still in the running to win the Premier League title. United played Sunderland and Manchester City played against Queen's Park Rangers, where it took them until the last minute to score the winning goal. And with that goal from Aguero, Manchester City just edged Manchester United in terms of goal difference. And subsequently, they sealed their first title in the Premier League era. So today we're going back to that historic day and we're going to look at the starting 11 of Manchester City against QPR. And we're going to look where these players are right now. And as always, be sure to like the video if you want to see more from me. And also subscribe to the channel if you're new. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Starting off in goal, and obviously we're going to talk about Joe Hart, because in 2012, everything was going great for the young shot stopper. At the time he was just 25 years old and he was already a starter for Manchester City, and he was also a starter for the English national team. And all of that at only 25 years old. And for Joe Hart, this wasn't his only Premier League title, because 2 years later he won the title again with Manchester City in the 2013-2014 season. And the story of Joe Hart at Manchester City was particularly impressive because he was already there before the takeover. He already made his debut in 2006, but he became a regular the season after. And everything was going great for Joe Hart until Guardiola took over the club. From the start that Guardiola joined the club, he immediately said that he wanted a different goalkeeper because he didn't think that Joe Hart was great with his feet. From one day to another, Joe Hart all of a sudden wasn't the goalkeeper for Manchester City anymore, and then Claudio Bravo was brought in, and this wasn't a great replacement. That's why subsequently Manchester City forked out a massive fee for Ederson, and it's safe to say that he was way better than Claudio Bravo. Joe Hart went out on loan twice when he was still at Manchester City, going out on loan to Torino and West Ham, and both of those spells weren't great. He fully left Manchester City and joining Burnley, and also that stint wasn't perfect. And at that time it looked like Hart's Premier League career was over, but in the 2020-2021 season Tottenham signed him as a backup goalkeeper. He still managed to play 10 games for the club, which is pretty decent, but after he left to Celtic in the Scottish Premiership. And last season he did great over there, playing 54 times, and actually he looked like the old Joe Hart again. And I'm very happy to see Joe Hart do really well again, because obviously back in the day he was great, but every single loan move and club he signed for after Manchester City was just horrific. Not the clubs obviously, but the way he played there. Now that he's doing well at Celtic, I'm happy for him and I hope that he can keep this up. Next up is the right back on the day, and you guys probably expected Mika Richards to feature as he was mostly irregular during the season. But towards the end of the campaign, Pablo Zabaleta took over his spot as first right back in that team. And in the Premier League that season he played 21 times, only scoring one goal, but it was a very important one. In the seasons after, Pablo Zabaleta was Manchester City's first right back, and he was even picked ahead of Maicon, who joined from Inter. He stayed with the club until 2017, and by the time he left he was a fan favorite at the Etihad Stadium. But after 9 years with the club, he joined West Ham, and 3 years later he retired. And right now he's working as a TV pundit, so it's safe to say that Zabaleta carved out a pretty decent career for himself. The third of the two centre backs on the day was Julian Lescott, and it's safe to say that this isn't quite a Ruben Dias type player that they have right now. And with 30 Premier League games, he was definitely a big part in Manchester City's title challenge. Or title win actually, because obviously they won it. And also for Lescott, this wasn't his only Premier League title with City, because he also stayed until the 13-14 season, where he won his second Premier League title. But new signings came in, and subsequently there was no place for Julian Lescott anymore, so he was sold to West Brom, where he stayed for 2 seasons. Also his time there wasn't great. In his second season he only made 2 appearances, so that's why he was sold to Aston Villa, and also there things didn't really go as planned. In his first season with Aston Villa, the club already got relegated, and we all remember the tweet that he apparently tweeted from his pocket with a new Mercedes after a big loss. And this really didn't go down well with Aston Villa, so the next season in the Championship he played 0 times. So then obviously he had to leave the club as well. He joined AEK Athens over in Greece, and he only played 4 times there before returning to the Premier League in Sunderland. And to be fair, also this wasn't great. He played 2 times and the club also got relegated, so this was not a great end to his career. So after leaving Manchester City things weren't great, but nobody can take away that he won 2 Premier League titles with Manchester City as a starter. And the next centre back is Vincent Kompany, and this guy is a true Manchester City legend. And this is another player that was already at the club before the takeover. Kompany was a great defender, but he also was a great leader on and off the pitch. And obviously in that campaign he was also great for Manchester City. He played 30 times and he scored twice, and he also gave 2 assists. And obviously this was also his first Premier League title, but he stayed long enough with the club in order to win 4 in total, so 3 more. And maybe in the 1890 season he was most valuable out of those 4 titles, because in his last season with the club he scored a 30-yard strike an unbelievable goal against Leicester City, and that subsequently was the difference between Liverpool and Manchester City that season. So after 11 years with City, he left the club in order to join Anderlecht over in Belgium to become a player/manager there. And after hanging up his boots, he is now a manager back in England again, not in the Premier League, in the Championship, as he's now the manager of Burnley. And I'm very curious to see how he will perform with the club this season. In the 2011-12 season, Clichy and Kolarov were two left backs in the Manchester City side, but Clichy definitely played the most. And that season, Clichy was great for Manchester City. He didn't score any goals, but he delivered 5 assists for the club. And before the start of the season, the club signed him from Arsenal in order to win the Premier League title, which obviously worked. And at the beginning of the season, they signed another player from Arsenal as well, so stay tuned in order to find out who that player is. And after more than 200 appearances for the club, Clichy left Manchester City in 2017 for Istanbul Başakşehir. He played there for 3 years, racking up more than 100 appearances before joining Swiss team Servette. And the 36-year-old isn't done yet because he recently just signed a 1-year contract extension. So this season, he will still be a professional football player over in Switzerland. Moving on to the first midfielder, and I personally think that this guy was a great player, and I'm obviously talking about Yaya Toure. Before joining Manchester City, Yaya Toure was a Barcelona player, but when Guardiola took over, he favored Sergio Busquets, so Yaya Toure wasn't the first team player anymore. And believe me, this was not the last time that Guardiola wasn't a fan of Yaya Toure. So in 2010, he was allowed to leave the club, and that's why Man City signed him up. And Toure definitely played a big part in the title-winning season because he had 19 goal involvements in 42 games in all competitions. And the thing that I always liked about this player is that he always had a great goal-scoring output from center mid, sometimes even from defensive mid. And the best example of that is the 13-14 season, where Manchester City also won the title, but he had 36 goal involvements in 49 games. And that was in all competitions because in the Premier League he scored 20 and gave 9 assists in 35 games. And again, this guy played in a central midfield role. But unfortunately for Yaya Toure, Guardiola followed him to Manchester City in 2016, and the same thing happened to him at Barcelona. Guardiola preferred other players, so in 2018 he was sold to Olympiacos. And after Olympiacos he played 1 year in China before finally retiring. But in his 8 years at Manchester City he was absolutely great, and right now he's trying to become a coach. He recently passed his UEFA A badge, so he is actually eligible to become a coach. It will be interesting to see which club will actually sign him up as a coach first. But there's no denying that this guy was a great player and definitely one of the better players to ever play in the Premier League. The player next to Yaya Toure was Gareth Barry, and this guy was not really talked about a lot. And right now, if you talk about Manchester City and that season, Gareth Barry is not the first name you will think of. But he definitely played a big part in taking them from mid-table to title winners. After winning the title, he stayed with Manchester City for 1 more season before joining Everton, first on loan, but then on a permanent deal. So he actually left just before the season that Manchester City won their second Premier League title. But after 5 years and more than 150 appearances for Everton, he joined West Brom. And unfortunately for him, he only played 1 season in the Premier League because after they got relegated, so he spent 2 more years with them in the Championship. And something that I actually didn't know is that Gareth Barry is the record holder for most appearances in the Premier League ever. For more than 650 Premier League appearances, 1 Premier League title, 1 FA Cup, so this guy had a great career for himself. Next up is Manchester City's right winger on the day, and that was Samir Nasri. And back in the day, Nasri was such a talented player. He was already great at Arsenal, and that's exactly why Manchester City bought him just before winning the Premier League title. And at Manchester City, Nasri definitely showed glimpses of greatness, and in his first season with City, he even had 15 goal contributions in all competitions, which is definitely not bad. And Nasri stayed for 4 more seasons with Manchester City, playing more than 170 games and scoring 27 times. And just like with Yaya Toure, Guardiola favored other players over Nasri. And to be fair, it is understandable. Nasri was a great player, and on his day he was unplayable, but he wasn't reliable, and that's exactly what Guardiola needed. In the 16-17 season, he was loaned out to Sevilla, where he actually did pretty well. But unfortunately for him, the move was never made permanent. Sevilla tried it, but they didn't succeed. But even though he had other options in Europe, he joined Antalyaspor over in Turkey. But this move turned out to be the worst decision that Nasri ever made, because he didn't play well over in Turkey, and he also got an 18-month ban for doping. He did return to the Premier League though with West Ham in the 18-19 season, where he only went on to play 6 times, and he couldn't really impress over there. So at last, in the 19-20 season, he joined Anderlecht, where he went on to play 8 times, scoring 2 times in the process. Nasri officially retired in 2021, and this guy was a great player on his day, like I said, but unfortunately he never really fulfilled his potential. And right now he's doing a lot of TV pundit work, which he seems to like a lot. Unfortunately, Nasri never really reached the heights that were expected from him. Next up, we're moving on to the left winger of the day, and that was David Silva. And again, this guy is a true Manchester City club legend. And if you want to talk about a player that has won it all, you need to look at David Silva, because he won 14 titles with Manchester City, and he also won the World Cup and the European Cup with Spain. The only thing that misses is the Champions League, but that's not something something that Manchester City players are very familiar with. And in 2020, after 10 years with the club and more than 430 appearances, he left in order to join Real Sociedad over in Spain. But unfortunately, he couldn't get a proper send-off from the Manchester City fans due to the pandemic, and he also wasn't able to unveil his own statue at the Etihad Stadium. And at 36 years of age, this guy is still going strong in Spain, where he's going into his third season with Real Sociedad. The starting centre forward of the day was Carlos Tevez, and his season was probably as crazy as that final match day in the Premier League. Because mid-season, this guy just walked out of the club after a bust-up with the head coach Mancini, after he allegedly refused to come on in the Champions League game against Bayern Munich. But in February he returned and he was great in the last part of the season. But because of that whole situation, he only managed to play 13 times in the Premier League for City, but he still had 7 goal involvements. And after winning the title with City, he stayed for one more season, where he actually did pretty well for himself with 70 goals in 47 appearances before joining Juventus, where he scored 50 goals in only 2 seasons, which was pretty great, before finally returning to Boca Juniors. And after 3 years with the club, he went to China, where he became one of the best paid players in the entire world before returning to Boca Juniors again. And after retiring at the age of 37, he is now a head coach over in Argentina. And the last player of this 11 is obviously the most important player, because Sergio Aguero is arguably the biggest player that Manchester City ever had. One thing that's for sure is that he definitely scored the most important goal for the club ever, because his last minute winner against QPR secured their first Premier League title. And in his debut season, he scored 30 goals in all competitions. And in total, he stayed with Manchester City for 10 years, scoring 260 goals, becoming the club's all-time top scorer. But in 2021, he left the club after winning 14 trophies to join Barcelona. But unfortunately, shortly after joining, he had to retire due to heart conditions. But it's unbelievable what this guy has done for the club, and this guy is a true Premier League legend. And right now, I'm going to talk about the 3 substitutions that came on in the game, and I haven't done this before, but I feel like these players are kind of important, and it's almost impossible not to mention them. The first one is Mario Balotelli. As we all know, Balotelli was the guy that gave the assist for Aguero's late winner. And funnily enough, this was the only assist that Balotelli ever gave while at Manchester City. He joined AC Milan the following season, and after that he joined Liverpool, Nice, Marseille, Brescia and Monza. And right now he's active in Turkey, where he plays for Adana Demirspor, where he's actually doing pretty well for himself. The other substitution is Edin Dzeko. That is the guy that scored the late equalizer for Manchester City. Dzeko never became a main feature for Manchester City, which is not a big surprise, as they obviously had Aguero. But to be fair, he actually did great at Manchester City, where he scored 72 times in 189 games before he finally left the club, joining AS Roma. And also there he did pretty well. He scored 190 times in 260 games. And last season he played for Inter Milan, where he also did pretty well, scoring 17 times in 49 games. And the last substitution was Nigel de Jong, and he was often brought on if Mancini wanted to force a breakthrough, because he would allow Yaya Toure to play a little bit more forward. But shortly after, Nigel de Jong left the club in order to join AC Milan. And after he joined many different clubs, he went to America with LA Galaxy, he joined Galatasaray, Mainz, and he also played in Qatar. And in 2021, Nigel de Jong retired, and now he's a TV pundit. But anyways guys, that's the video. What do you think of this starting 11, and who do you think is the biggest Manchester City legend? As always, be sure to like, share and subscribe. Check out my videos on the end screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace!